right, welcome to Peace of Mind Radio Podcast. I'm Brian Ramsey. That's Chris Vaughn. That's Eric Douglas. And today's an interesting one because I just had the experience this past week.
Yeah.
It was fairly interesting. I was telling the guys about this. One of the things I basically hate to do more than anything, which I think everybody kind of agrees, is buying a new car.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's just not a pleasant experience. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the justification on how you go about determining whether or how to buy a car. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to talk about. It's kind of cool. So two things we're going to focus on today is how you justify buying a car.
Right.
And that's either paying cash or financing it. We're not talking about leases. Leases is a totally different story. That's maybe for another day.
Yeah.
And then last but not least is one that Chris and I debated on and that Chris and I have basically a totally opposite opinion on. And it's about whether to do an extended warranty. Now, I'm not saying whether I did or not, and I'm not saying whether he believes it or not. You'll have to find out.
You're going to figure that one out.
You're going to find out at the end of the show how we view that. Anyway, so let's talk about, first of all, your all's opinion on you want to go buy a car. It doesn't have to be new or used or whatever, but you go buy a car. What do you typically do?
Well,
I mean, do you pay cash? Do you finance it? How do you view that?
Obviously, I got to figure out what kind of vehicle we're buying. So whether it's for me or my wife, for example. You know what? It depends on what kind of financing rates I can get. If they're offering me 2%, I'm going to finance it all day. And the reason why is the money that I would be paying in cash, think about what I could do with that money, if I invested it correctly, for example. I mean, hopefully we know how to do that. So I'm going to finance it if it's a really low rate. If the finance rates were extremely high, say if they offered me 10%, I'm going to pay cash. I'm not going to do something dumb like that if I have that choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always take the route of pretty substantial down payment, at least at a minimum, probably 30, 40%. And then usually finance the rest. As long as you're shopping the rates around, that's the key. Good. Don't just go into the dealership, and I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but you definitely typically want to come in with some kind of financing offer in hand before you go onto a car lot.
Yep. But I didn't want to steal your thunder because I knew you were going to talk about that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Eric's absolutely right.
And we'll get to that in a little bit more. But, yeah, I'm on the same page. I mean, obviously we're finance guys, right? Yeah. We're investment guys. So it goes down to the whole, okay, well, if I'm not going to spend it, well, I'm going to invest it, right? And so as long as you have the diligence to, have that mindset of being able to do something alternative with your money as opposed to just spending it on something else. Right. If you're investing it and kind of recouping what you would be spending in interest, which I know that's what we're going to get into in a little bit more detail as far as the numbers are concerned. That's usually my mindset.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the things I think is, and you guys have heard this, we say this all the time. We've said it on our radio show for years. Now we've been continue to say it on our podcast. Is every major financial decision, and I'm going to say a car is a major financial decision.
I agree
because we did a podcast last year, I guess, about how much it actually cost you to have to own a car. And it's far more than what the sticker price of the car is. I mean, it is way, way more than that. So we would consider that as a major financial decision. If you're going out and buying a $3,000 car, maybe not. But when you're talking about a pretty good chunk of change for a car, that's really a major financial decision. Yep. And what we say is in every major financial decision, there's two aspects to it. And you need both in order to make a proper decision. You've got to get the numbers side of it. What do the numbers look like?
Right.
And then you have to deal with the emotional side. And you'll see as we go through this, I do both. In this I just bought a car, okay? So I do both. I literally looked at all the numbers and said, okay, the numbers make sense for me to do one. And then I looked at the numbers on another case, and I'm like, I don't really care what the number is. I'm going to go with the emotional side of that decision.
Yeah.
Right? And so, all right, so and you guys probably know.
You just teed up what we're talking about there.
Well, I mean, we talk about this a lot as far as emotional versus, the logical nature of making investment decisions or financial decisions. But especially when it comes to cars, if you're a car guy, I mean, the majority of your decision making is going to be based on the emotional side of it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Speaking of, if you're a car guy, I think we probably should tell everybody which ones of us are car guys. I think that's fair. Eric,
I'm not
a car guy.
I'm not a car guy at all. I'll tell you. So my very first job out of college, I was working for a mortgage company, and one of my bosses, I tell you, I'm not going to bring up his name right now, but he had like 7 rental properties, made pretty good money, had 7 rental properties, and just drove this beat up Buick.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. He said, "Why would I put money in a car? It's a depreciating asset." He said, "It's a depreciating asset. Never put money in a depreciating asset." And I just. the luck I had with cars growing up, I always had just kind of beat up cars. That's all I could afford, really.
Yeah.
So I got used to, if I can get from A to B with an air conditioner and a radio, I'm golden. So that's always been my approach. You're not. You don't have that approach, and I know you don't have that approach either.
Right.
But I just never really put too much value on cars. I know a lot of people do, though.
And like, Brian and I both, we're car fans in that we like car racing. Brian likes old cars, and you talk about that. Me, because I live out in Shelby County, so my commute to pretty much anywhere, I'm going to be on the road for 20, 25 minutes minimum. So it's important to me that I have a car that's really, really comfortable to drive at, highway speeds for long periods of time. That's important to me. So,
yeah.
And then you've obviously got a fetish for older cars.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've grown up with a dad that we've collected old cars for years, and then I have an old car sitting in my driveway right now, or in my garage. Sorry, it's not sitting in my driveway.
Yeah, the Mustang people.
Yeah, it hadn't seen rain. It hadn't seen rain in 40 years. Water from Washington or whatever. But all right. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, I do like a nice car, right? I don't buy new cars, by the way. I always buy something used, which is what we're going to talk about now, and that is I looked at buying a new car, and I bought a 2020 Expedition. Okay, so I looked around, and they're all priced about the same, right? So the question came down to, and I found one I wanted. Okay, it was basically $65,000, which is ridiculous, but it is what it is. So the question, and I had a trade in, all right? So all that's going to factor in. But the question was, do I pay cash or do I finance it?
Right.
That's question number one. Before I ever went to the dealership, I was like, I got to figure out what the difference is between me paying cash and me financing it. So the way I look at it is, I'm buying a vehicle that's a depreciating asset, as Eric said.
Yep.
So I sort of guessed and said, it's going to lose, let's say over a 5-year period. That's about how long I'll keep it. Hopefully longer, but let's say 5 years. So I paid $65,000 for it. My guess is in 5 years I'll be able to sell that thing for, let's say, $25,000 probably, because those cars hold good value. And so really I'm going to lose $40,000 over that time period, right? So it doesn't matter whether I pay cash or whether I finance it. The value doesn't change. Right. So I know that I know that variable, right? Yep. That it is what it is. So that's number one. Then number two is, do I, again, pay cash for it or do I finance it? Now, the question that I said to myself was, where is the best use of my money? Is it me paying cash for a car? But then there's that opportunity cost of me taking that, and when I traded in my car, I should say that I got like $15,000 for the car I had. So I wound up saying I'm going to finance $50,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question was, do I take $50,000? Is that the best use of my money, or could I keep the $50,000 invested, as you mentioned, and pay interest on my loan? Right. So I kind of did the math, and here's what it came up to. I'll back up. So the other thing I did, so I knew what the numbers were, sort of, but I had to figure out what the interest rate was, because that's key, right?
Yep.
Because if the interest rate was 5, 6, 7%, then it doesn't, that makes it pretty clear. But you have to know what the interest rate is in order to do the calculation, know what you should do.
And you're talking about the interest rate on the loan, right?
Correct.
You got to make an apples to apples comparison.
Right.
Yeah. But you also have to calculate what the interest rate is on the money that you're going to invest, the interest rate, right, or the investment rate, whatever you want to call it. So here's what I did. I called a finance company and I said, here's the car I'm looking at. Could you give me a rate? Before I ever went to a dealership, as Eric said, I didn't tell the dealership I was doing this. So I called them and they said, hey, we'll get you, you qualify for 2.64%. I was like, oh, fantastic. So I ran the numbers. I said, okay, now they got a clear picture of cash versus investing.
Yep.
Right? So here's what I did. Well, I'll keep going, then I'll come back to the numbers. So I go to the dealership and I say, hey, I've already pre-qualified for 2.64%. And they said, well, can we try to beat it? And I, absolutely.
Sure.
So they did. They went to Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo came back and said 2.5%. Fantastic. Now I can really do the numbers.
Yeah.
So I did. So on the cash side, if I paid cash, again, $50,000 essentially, because I had 65 plus a trade-in of 15, and that left 50, and I had to pay. I invested 50,000, or I'd pay cash. The other side was I financed $50,000, so I didn't put any additional down because I look at it and said, if I can take my $50,000 and invest it, and on average, my investment, the way my risk profile is that I should get somewhere between, let's call it 7 to 9%.
Right.
Sometimes maybe more like 10. I like
Sure.
to be a little bit more aggressive, but that's just me, right? That because it fits my financial plan. But let's say on average, I get 5% rate of return. That's the number I use for easy math. Okay. All right. So here's how it worked. I said, so $50,000 financed. Over the course of that 5-year loan, I'm paying right at $3,000 worth of interest over that 5-year period,
Yeah.
which is really not that much.
That's not bad.
In the big picture, that's not that much. So now, if the car value is dropping by $40,000 over that 5-year period, just like if we paid cash, right? And then I'm going to add the $3,000 on top of it of interest I paid, you might initially say, well, that doesn't make sense. You're better off to pay cash.
Right.
Right. But then we have to look at the opportunity cost.
Correct.
So then I take the $50,000 that I didn't pay and I invest it. If I invest $50,000 at a 5% rate of return,
5%.
5%, that's it.
Not
That's
outrageous.
modest.
Not outrageous.
No,
modest
that's
rate of return.
Very doable.
conservative,
Yep.
yeah.
Very, very doable. At the end of 5 years, I will have gained almost $14,000 in gain. Okay, so now I'm up $14,000 on that investment. So now big picture, right? I'm going to have to look because I got to look at my math here. So car loses value, $40,000, same as cash, right? Same as my cash option. I paid $3,000 worth of interest. So $43,000 is my out, right? That's my loss so far. But I made, let's call it an even $13,000, just for easy math. I made $13,000 on that investment.
Yeah.
So really, my net is I'm down $30,000 over the course of that 5-year loan.
By paying cash.
Now, so the numbers would say, no brainer. What do? You finance it, right? That's what it says. Now, you have to go back on the emotional side. This is where everybody has to go back and say, well, how do you feel about debt? I'm totally fine with debt as long as I look at the numbers and go, the numbers make total sense. And I feel pretty confident. Well, I know I can get the 2.5. I already was approved for that. But I know that I can get at least 5% on that money. More likely, I'm going to wind up getting maybe twice that, right? Because that's just, I'm a pretty aggressive investor. So I'm probably going to wind up way ahead of that $13,000. Does it make sense?
Yep.
So that's how you justify it. Then you have to look at the emotional side, as we said. I'm totally fine with debt. I don't have a problem with it as long as it's not too much and it's smart debt. I'm told. Well, I think Eric, you said that a minute ago. It's smart debt.
Well, as long as you manage it correctly and
Yeah.
you have the diligence to
Right.
be able to take. Okay, if I'm going to finance this $50,000, I have to have the diligence to invest it. I can't go spend it on
And
something
stay
else.
in the investments.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because for that calculation to work, you have to have the wherewithal to be able to invest,
Right.
to stay invested, to be able to recoup the loss of the interest that you're having to pay on the financing.
Right. And I will say one thing. You also have to have the cash flow to take care of the monthly
Correct.
payment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. You can't. So I've known my monthly cash flow. It was totally fine to do that. I did the math and looked at my budget and was like, yep, I can handle that. So, but if you don't, the only option is to pay cash or not buy
Right.
as an expensive car or whatever the case is. But that's just one way. When you buy a car, you got to do the number side of it, and that's just one way to do the numbers. The other takeaway from this is what Eric said in the very beginning. Don't go into a dealer unless you've already contacted a finance group and said, what can I get pre-approved for? Because then you have leverage against
And the
the
key
dealership.
thing there was pre-approved.
Yeah, you
They've
gotta get
already said, if you find this vehicle, we
Yeah.
will finance it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
typically, too, because I was mentioning making a down payment, and you said you didn't. Sometimes you're going to get a better rate, better interest rate
That's true.
if you do come with
Yep.
the down payment. So knowing those different options as far as do I need a down payment, do I not, and what kind of rate difference will there be?
Yeah. And just know, when you go into a dealer, when they call to do your credit check and they see who they call Wells Fargo or whoever it is and get approved, they're going to get some percentage rate. Then they mark it up because they're going to take a spread.
Sure.
They get paid on the spread. So you just have to know that going into it. I don't know what they got approved really, but they gave me 2.5. And I don't really care if they were getting 1.5 through Wells Fargo and they charged me 1%. I don't really care. 2.5 was a great number. Yeah. But just make sure you do everything you need to do prior to walking into a dealership.
I think there's a fallacy. So many people think that they can walk into a car lot and haggle with these guys and make or save just an absolute ton of money on the sale price, right? That's not really where most car lots they don't make their money on the sale price. Mm-hmm. They're trying to get you on the financing. They're trying to get you on the service, and I know we're going to get to that next too.
Yeah.
But there's not really much haggling you can do, especially in today's environment too. We haven't even talked about what it's like to go buy a car in today's environment, where demand is so high because the supply is so low.
Yeah.
I just a reference. We were talking about buying a new car. We're thinking about buying a new minivan. I've got 3 kids, so it's really, I know it's uncool, but it is what it is, right?
Make sure you get the wood paneling on the side. Go for the whole look.
Yeah, but so we are pricing out the minivan that we got when my twins were born, and it's like a 2011. So it's nearing 200,000 miles, right? But it's obviously pretty old. It's showing its age. I was pricing it out. To get the exact same model, slightly used, is going to cost like $12,000 more than what I paid for it 10 years ago.
Yep.
It's insane how much inflation has occurred in that segment of the industry. So
traditionally, when you go buy a new car at a dealership, there's not a lot of markup in those vehicles. The markup was on the used car side, but to your point, Eric, that has changed because of the sheer size of the inventory they've got to work with now.
And you're also getting a better rate usually if you buy a new car.
Yep.
Ironically, most people think they're going to save money buying a used car. Well, the car lots make more money on the used cars because they can increase the spread of the interest rate that they're offering you on the financing.
Correct.
Yep, that is true. All right, so so the last piece. This is so I made a deal. I go to the finance guy. You know, we've come up with an agreement. We go to the finance guy. I sit down, and what's he try to do?
Extended warranty.
Yeah, he tries to do the extended warranty. So this is where we have a little bit of debate. Thoughts on extended warranties on cars, not dishwashers or whatever. Just cars in general.
All right, I'm not a fan of extended warranties for anything. I'm just not a fan because it's kind of like term life insurance. They never pay out because you typically don't use them, or even better, you paid for it and then you do have the problem and you forget that you had the warranty and you never make the claim. So the profit margins are really, really high. That's why I'm not a fan. That being said, the very last vehicle that my wife and I bought, which is her current car, we put the extended warranty on it. And the reason I did was different than the way that you did it. It was a peace of mind thing for me. But the guy's saying, "Okay, here's the extended warranty. Here's how much it's going to cost." And it's like, dude, you need to stop, because I can play the negotiation game all day long. I actually enjoy it. To me, it's fun. I'm the guy they hate, right? But he kept saying, "Well, what if we do it for this? Well, what if we do it for this? And we'll take off some of the features." Not interested, right? But then he threw on, okay, well, what if we throw some service into it? Okay, my wife is not the type who will take the vehicle in to get it serviced unless I harass her about it. It's just not the way she thinks. But he laid it out where basically if she took it in for service on the intervals that it's supposed to be done, the warranty was the same cost. He included all that in there. So it was a break even for me, and it came down to a peace of mind. The vehicle's going to last a lot longer because I want her to drive it until the wheels fall off, and that's what she said she wanted to do too. If she's doing the maintenance correctly, the vehicle's going to last a lot longer, and you're going to spend a whole lot more in operating cost. So to me, the extended warranty was not the value. It was the maintenance plan that they built into it. So that's a kind of a long-winded version of how I feel about extended warranty.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't believe in them.
Yeah. See?
I'm pretty much universally opposed. Now, 95 times out of 100, they're not going to pay out, and you're basically wasting your money.
Right.
It is what it is. The 5 times out of 100 where you need it, they're infinitely valuable, and they pay for themselves times 10, right? So they can be very valuable, but it's a numbers game, right? People still go to the casinos and gamble. I mean, if you're making a logical decision, logically, most of the time they don't make sense. Emotionally, absolutely, which I know you're getting to. They absolutely can make sense.
If you do the maintenance that the manufacturers recommend, you religiously do it and you do what you're supposed to do with it, odds are not too many things are going to go wrong with your vehicle unless you just got really bad luck like I sometimes do. If you get the extended warranty, theoretically, well, it would cover you because you didn't get that done. But a lot of those extended warranties, if you don't get the maintenance done correctly and on schedule, the warranty's void. That's one of those little small things. So that's where, to your point, Eric, they're usually not a very good investment.
Yeah. So that being said, I took the opposite approach. So I did, and this is one of those that, numbers wise, you guys are absolutely right. If a car's going to go bad, it's going to go bad right off the line. So you're going to know pretty quickly. This thing had 13,000 miles on it. Odds are it's had no maintenance issues. We got the Carfax, whatever. No maintenance issues whatsoever. They just changed the oil, whatever. So the odds are there's nothing going to happen to this vehicle. It came with the 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty that comes with the car. I think this one had 5-year, 50,000, but it didn't.
Common now.
Yeah. But here's the thing. If something's going to happen on a car, and we all know that in today's world, these cars are very technologically driven.
Yeah.
So if there's going to be something happen, it's going to be something in the electronics in the car, more than likely, more than like a fuel pump or something like that going out, right? Mm-hmm. So, because all that would be sort of covered for at least the first 50,000 miles. But anyway, so when you look at some of the things that would not be covered under your traditional warranty, I looked at it and was like, okay, it's $2,000, which is like $40 a payment, which is what I did. But to me, I know it's not a great investment. I'd much better off taking the $2,000, investing it, and having it grow, and then having $3,000 or $4,000 in 4 years when I have a problem to be able to pay for the maintenance. I get it, but to me, this was 100% an emotional decision. I do not want to deal with a car when there's an issue. I want to drive it to the dealership, drop it off, get my whatever loaner car, and drive off, and then call and tell me that it's fixed. I want to go back and pick it up. Yeah. I just don't want to deal with it, right? I have other things in life that are more important. I don't want to deal with having a car with issues and knowing how much I'm going to pay. So for me, it was purely an emotional decision.
You are an emotional guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Real emotional. But to me, it was just purely an emotional decision. I was like, I know it may not make the best financial sense in the world, but I don't care. I'm gonna.
But that goes back, and I've heard you say this to clients many, many times. There's a logical side to a decision, but there's also an emotional component. And to throw that emotional component out and not consider it's not human. It's not the way we work. So
yeah, I mean, we can walk and do all the numbers and walk through the logical side and make everything make sense on that side. We can consult and talk about the emotional side, but ultimately that's a decision that you have to make on your own.
Look, it's no different than this, right? We have clients that call us all the time and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a car. What should I do? And they were, sometimes they'll say, hey, I'm thinking about leasing a car. Should I do that? Yep. We're not talking about leases today. But basically, we tell them, do the numbers, and we'll do numbers all day long with them and show them that numbers-wise, we'll tell you to finance the car. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I just don't like debt. Then pay cash for the car. It doesn't matter what the numbers say, because most of the time, the emotional piece will override the number side.
And the money you would save by financing it and then investing it, if you're the type who's going to lose sleep over that kind of debt, well, now you got medical problems, which is going to be more. If your emotions say, I don't like the debt, fine. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So I guess at the end of the day, it's all about doing the numbers, seeing what makes sense. And if you're comfortable having debt, then do the evaluation. Because it very well could be that that you can't make enough with the investment, the opportunity cost doesn't pay off, and so you're much better off paying cash. So just do the numbers, right? And if you've got questions, come see us. We'll be happy to kind of walk you through it. And if you are opposed to the warranty, then you can email these two guys and say, I agree.
We'll support you.
Yeah. But no negative comments about me buying the extended warranty, because maybe I shouldn't have done it. But anyway, I feel good about my decision. So anyway, with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you tune in. Next week, we'll have another edition of Peace of Mind Radio podcast. We also have 2 other podcasts. Chris mainly does the one we sort of tagged him to do, Connecting the Commonwealth. And that is more about entrepreneurs and small business owners. And we highlight their business or service or product. So make sure you tune in or watch that one. And you can search that one by looking at Connecting the Commonwealth, right? Yep. Searching Connecting the Commonwealth.
Absolutely.
And then we have a third one, which we are going to shoot here just in a little bit, and it's called Burgers and Bourbon. Hey. And we evaluate a local burger and a local bourbon, so make sure you tune in and watch those. So anyway, I'll let Eric sign us off, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Give us a rating and a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. And we appreciate it. Thanks. The information given herein is taken from sources that IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, IFP Securities, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors. This report may not be reproduced, distributed, or published by any person for any purpose without IFP's express prior written consent. Securities offered through IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, member of FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through IFP Advisors, doing business as IFP, a registered investment advisor. IFP and Family Wealth Planning Partners are not affiliated. The information given herein is taken from sources that IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as IFP, IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors.